In this lesson, we will learn that lazy naming conventions can sometimes be the cause of confusion when you're trying to import those files into your After Effects projects. Okay, so I'm starting off here in the 02_begin After Effects project files, and that already has a few assets imported here that we're just going to be starting out with. And what I want to do now is import a few new files to kind of talk about this strange thing that happens sometimes whenever you just sort of use a lazy naming convention when you're creating files to be imported into After Effects. So what do I mean when I say lazy naming convention? It's really whenever maybe you create a series of files of something that's going to go into your After Effects project and you just name them something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So even if you put a name in front of it, like what the files are going to be that we'll use here, but you still put those numbers at the end, it can cause some problems. So let's come over here to our project panel. I'm just going to right click and go to Import File. And that's going to bring up my project files folder for me. So if you're just looking inside of there, you'll see project files, assets, graphics is where that's going to be. And so we already have the desk and wallpaper files imported, as you can see over here in our project panel. But then we have these 3 Illustrator files that are Office 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just going to click that first one that says -01 and go ahead and say open, just like I was importing a regular file. But instead of it giving me the little Illustrator icon like my other 2 Illustrator files have, I get this other kind of icon out here to the left, and it has this 1-3 out to the side of it. So that's kind of strange. That seems a little bit confusing and not maybe what I wanted it to do. So if I just go ahead and try to drag that over here and put it on my table, maybe that's what I'm wanting to use that file for. It's like a little cup of pencils. I'll notice that down here in my timeline, this layer is not the length of my comp. And normally, if I just grabbed a regular asset layer like that, it would go ahead and automatically fill the length of the timeline. So that's kind of confusing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of scrub through this and see what happens. It looks like there's other files being included as I scrub through there. So it seems like every frame it's changing. So what happened, what went wrong, and why is it happening? Let's go ahead and go back to that import window. I'm going to come over here to the project panel, right click, click import again and go to file. It's going to bring me back to that same place. And I'm just going to do the same thing I did last time, but not click open, and we'll just talk about what has been selected here. Anytime you have a series of files that has this number naming convention at the end, it's going to give you a default import style that is a sequence. It wants to automatically detect that you've saved your files as a sequence, and so it wants to import them where it will play one file right after the other. So if I come down here, it says Illustrator PDF/EPS sequence. That little box has been checked. So that is where this confusion is coming from. And if you've already imported sequences before, you would know that this little icon is the icon you get when you import a sequence. So this is something that can cause you some confusion right at the beginning when you're just getting started in After Effects and something like this happens. You're wondering, why can't I see the file for the entire length of my timeline? And you may go to great lengths to try to get that to work. So one of the obvious ways of getting this to work properly for you is simply to go in there and change the name. So maybe name it something a little bit more descriptive. You could just double click that and name that pencils, and that would go ahead and alleviate that for you. But if that fails, an easy way to get around this is simply to come down here and uncheck that box that says sequence. So now if I just select that first file, click open, you'll see that now that's been imported with its file name just the same as these assets were when we imported them earlier. And that sequence is still there. And I still have that on my timeline. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab this one that we imported properly and drag that down. And you'll see that this one looks just like we want it to. So I'll go ahead and delete the sequence off of my timeline, and I'm going to also delete it out of my project panel. Then I'm going to come over here and go to import file, and you'll see that now when I come back and I'm ready to import the other ones, that sequence checkbox has not been checked. And you can also select all of them and import them all at the same time, and it won't import them as a sequence even if it's the first time that you're doing that. So kind of interesting, a little bit confusing if you don't know why that's happening, but it's an easy thing to fix, and really the best way to get around that is simply to name your files a little more descriptively, and that's going to help you whenever you come back in there and you just want to import one. You don't want to import all of them at the same time, because you're not going to get that error if you import them all, just selecting them all at the same time. But it's going to just help you to be able to figure out which one you want. You may not remember what Office 1 stands for. It's going to be the pencils, so that's just going to help you to stay a little more organized. So in this lesson we learned that the best thing to do when creating files is to name them descriptively, but when that fails, we know what to look for when we import to fix our problem.